Animal feed has important impact on the global food chain. Let's turn to Laurent Guénet about changes in the animal feed world and the connection between sustainability and food from animals versus other food sources.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. We have the pleasure to have with us today Mr. Laurent Guénet, Chief Strategy Officer at Nutrico, one of the leading animal feed companies in the world. Welcome, Laurent, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Karin. Nice to meet you again.
So Laurent, let's start by you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and obviously about Nutrico.
Yes, my name is Laurent Guénet. I'm Chief Strategy Officer at Nutrico. I've been working in the animal nutrition industry for 30 years, the last 13 years for Nutrico. And out of these 30 years, I spent 15 years in Asia, in countries like Indonesia, Vietnam, China, India. Working out of the Netherlands since 2015. So for Nutrico, which is an animal nutrition company, headquartered in the Netherlands, we are family owned. We are posting about 6.5 billion euro sales, operating across 37 countries with 12,000 colleagues. And we are running 100 of plants, where we are manufacturing 9 million tons of animal nutrition product. Either feeds we are feeding directly to farm, to animals and farm, or ingredients going in the recipe of animal feed made by other companies. Just to give you an idea, we are feeding 1/3 of the salmon, the farm salmon in the world. And we are the second largest provider of what we call premix, the mix of vitamins and minerals being used by animal nutrition company to make the feed. So it's a pretty large business indeed.
Thank you for that. It's quite impressive. So there are two schools of thoughts regarding sustainability challenges of the livestock industry. One school is totalistic, replacing animals entirely. The other is to address the sustainability challenges of the industry without eliminating the animals. Which do you see prevailing?
Well, indeed, that's a question we asked to ourselves already 5 years ago when we start to look into alternative protein. But to answer this question, actually, you have to look into our purpose, feeding the future, consisting in feeding the 7.5 billion people on Earth today. And that already take 1.5 planet. So we are overspending somehow on that. And going forward, that will become 10 billion people by 2050. And to do that, we'll have to produce 70%, 70, more food as we do today, using half of the resources we are using today to make the feed for animals. So, you know, the answer to your question is not really an answer. We cannot afford not to do anything consisting in achieving this target, because it's not a given. It's not sure we are going to succeed. If we fail, we starve. If we starve, we fight. If we have not enough for a few, there won't be enough for anybody. So for us, the answer to this is very much a and animal farming and alternative protein, or let's say protein without animals, and wasting less. So 30% of the food we are producing today goes to the waste, which is not acceptable. And that will also be eating less protein for some of us to allow others to eat more protein. So we have no choice. And once again, we are not 100% sure to make it. So for this reason, what we thought at the beginning would have been a threat for us, basically having animals disappearing, happened to be an opportunity. And that's why we are also investing in lab-grown meat company or alternative protein company. And at the same time, fostering our core business consisting in feeding animals.
So you talked a little bit about the future trends that you're seeing right now, alternative protein. What was the COVID-19 effects on your operation and on the future trends that you are seeing right now in the market?
Yes, On our operation themselves, well, we are kind of lucky because feeding animals means feeding people is considered as a strategic and let's say a critical activity all around the world. So no government prevent us to operate. Just because if you don't feed the chicken or the cows, then you don't have food for people. So we have been in position to keep on operating, even in a more challenging area, like in the north of Italy or in China. Our factories has been always working. That's one. Obviously, it has been much more challenging. Part of our supply chain has been upset, not disrupt. For a while, we have been struggling to supply either vitamin or ingredients, but not to the point we couldn't feed animals. The rest of our operation, well, when we could work from home, we have been working from home, and this is exactly what we do today. And we'll be doing that for a long period of time, maybe for some activity even forever. I don't call that a disruption. Once again, it shows that food counts. You can do whatever you want. You can have your Wi-Fi down or not be able to go to Facebook or to play Candy Crush for a while. Yeah, you will still make it, right? But if you don't eat 3 times a day for a few days or a few weeks, that's not the same feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. How does Nutreco position itself in the agri-tech landscape today and in the future?
Yeah, that's also a question we asked to ourselves like 5 years ago when we start to look into open innovation. And we have been considering at this time setting up a corporate venture to engage with startup. We got the mandate to do so back in 2018, 2019, investing a first, let's say, a first mandate of 20 million euros for startup operating in let's say, relevant for our core business, for animal nutrition. Extend the year after by another 20 million euros to invest in alternative protein, which is for us alternative protein for food, not for feed. So that's the ultimate disruption, right? Then there is no animal in between. So we are doing both. And we are positioning ourselves as a strategic investor. It means for us, it's not about financial return, it's about return on innovation. We are materializing the benefits we take from this activity through the way we engage with startup, a co-development agreement or commercial agreement. Obviously, we are doing that without preventing the financial investor and the founder to obtain financial return. Once again, it's end and end. So we have our own way to take benefits of this activity as a strategic, but we are very cautious, not impeding the momentum and not preventing the financial investor to get what they expect. And obviously even less the founder. It's a delicate balance, and this is a bit specific approach on that. Not harming the startup and not harming the investor first. And then we consider what kind of benefits you can bring.
So we have many startups in the crowd today, and they're probably very interested in about your investment and acquiring approach. Nutreco spends over 15% of its operational profit on R&D and innovation, which is quite impressive. What are the really specific key metrics that you are looking in startups that you want to invest in or acquired? What are you looking for to see?
Yeah, first thing, as a disclaimer, we are not looking at a startup as a potential acquisition target. The fact is we expect to create value to each other, the startup and ourselves, without having to do so necessarily. We could consider acquiring startup only if there is no other way to create value or if we start to be harmful for the other shareholder. So if we jeopardize the potential exit, for instance, if we are so critical for the startup, if we are their largest client, or their largest technology supplier, then we should acquire to prevent this kind of harmful behavior. So that's something which is a bit specific to our approach. But for us, what makes it or break it when you look into a startup is what I call the magic 2 digit. What are those 2 digits? This is the potential upside the startup had with this technology. In food and agriculture, you are dealing with the living stuff, right? Either animals or plants. And they are subject to a lot of, effect from environment, from disease, from whatever. And if you cannot secure an improvement in farming animals by 2 digits, then very often it won't show. Because on your way, you will have something else happening, not allowing the technology to deliver its full benefits. So, for instance, we have that in a startup, an Indian startup we invest. It's an Indian one, and we are using this technology in Ecuador. You increase the yield of the shrimp farm by 50 to 80%, 50 to 80. If you have a disease on your way, and then it's only 20%, still it shows. And there is no discussion. We really had value. So that is magic 2 digits. When you are in technology, like, I don't know, a startup in doing things in electronic or logistic or wherever, you can probably afford to go after more incremental improvement. But when you are dealing with biology, you do need that. And the second element we are really looking very closely is the team. These are people. What I call the love. We need love. This is what we try to make happen.
We all.
Not only we need to like them, but we also have our own staff, our own colleagues, loving them. I was talking to the head of the R&D in Skretting, one of our department, one of our division. He said, very often, my colleague, the researcher, the one we are, our own researcher, they come to me and they say, it's so hard to work with this startup. This is so demanding. This is extra work, overtime, Friday and Saturday and Sunday work. And then the question he asked to these people is, but do you like that? And they say, yes, we love that, we want. And this is what we try to make happen, and we try to see whether this is possible or not. If we don't have this feeling from both ends, then we just skip.
So obviously we will find, I think, many startups and excellent teams here in Israel that are eager to collaborate with you, and also eager to learn from you and to collaborate with your teams in order to build the strong relationships both ways. So just in a sentence, for our startups here in the crowd today, what is the best way for startups today to approach Nutrico and to work with you?
Well, we have a team scouting let's say, the startup landscape, and especially in Israel. We have already one investment and a very close collaboration. I would say probably one of the most successful, if not the most successful one, with the Israeli startup called Vayaqua. We got to know them through a bit of grapevine somehow. You know, it's a small, we call that ecosystem or club. That's people knowing each other, corporate venture knowing private equity or venture capital, attending event. We are also organizing what we call the FeedTech Challenge, so a startup competition. We are also funding young researcher. So we are known in the game somehow, very much approachable. And what we try to convey as a message is this: we don't harm. They can approach us. We are not going to eat them up alive. That's what makes our approach, I believe, relevant.
Thank you very much. It was very valuable. I'm sure that many the companies in our crowd today learned a lot. I learned a lot. So thank you for your time, and thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you, Karine. Bye.
Thank you.